Lincoln, how's it going there?
Ben, it's going well, my man. It's
That's
going well.
awesome. That's awesome. So, for everyone who doesn't know, this is Lincoln Nikkel, a friend of mine. He's living down in the States right now. He's in New Jersey right now, but he's been in Florida, and before that was, I don't know where else. He'll talk about it in a bit, but he's working for Chick-fil-A right now, and he's in the, I guess, mentor, I guess, training program, what you would call it, learning to run a business that he's then going to open when he's finished his program. So he's just going to talk a little bit about that to begin with, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that, man. Thanks again for having me.
Yeah,
It's exciting. I really was excited for this talk. So thank you first. It's a privilege to be able to spend some time talking to you and
yeah, me too.
sharing what I'm doing right now because I find it exciting. I'm passionate about it, and I've become more and more passionate about the brand that Chick-fil-A has and is building. Yeah. So right now, like you said, Ben, I'm right now in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Before this, I was in St. Petersburg, Florida, from um, January to March, like so about 3 months in Florida at a location there. And then previous to that, I was in Columbus, Mississippi. Probably never heard of that town, that city, but it was
I've only
a
heard of the Ohio variation, but
not quite Ohio. Look
yeah,
up Columbus, Mississippi later on. You'll see it between two college towns, and then this like 26,000 head tiny town, tiny city. There's no sidewalks. You can't walk anywhere. So it's just like you're just in the middle of nowhere. I looked out my window every single day and I looked at the highway. Like that was my view. So
I love it. That sounds
it,
like you're kind of small town, like
it
interpersonal investment kind of place.
really was. It really was, man. Um, so kind of like my background, I guess, on what I'm doing right now. So like you said, I'm in a leadership development program that Chick-fil-A offers. With that, what it basically is, it's kind of divided into two categories. Um, for an external for myself, usually people have been kind of working within Chick-fil-A for a number of years. They've gotten experience in kind of the different leadership roles within the business, from a team leader to shift leader to director to general manager, sometimes like a think partner for that operator or owner operator. Um, and then from there, a lot of the time they'll like apply for leadership development program with the intention and goal, like or sometimes not goal, but of like becoming an owner operator or going the corporate staff route within Chick-fil-A. And it's not like you have to do this program by any means to become an operator, but it's a way that a lot of like young leaders have a chance to like, really like grow as a leader, learn how to work with people well, how to manage and direct people, not even manage, but like lead people effectively, how to set goals, how to grow a business effectively, really scale like a ultimately like a multi-million dollar business. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the cool thing about it is that um, kind of backing up, I guess, a step is the two things are the two kind of branches of it are interim manager and grand opening supervisor. So those are the two roles that I will be kind of participating in. My first 6 months was a 6 month boot camp where um, even before those two roles that I started now, I did a 6 month boot camp. The first 3 months of that, 4 months of that was in Columbus, Mississippi, where literally like operations, you're deep in the weeds, like you're going in at it. And I'll shoot you straight, Ben. Like there were some days where I was making drinks and I was like, oh my goodness, like what have I done? but
You're like
uh,
this college degree and like all this training to get to this point, and I'm making soft drinks.
and yeah, and like I previous to this, I was doing kind of some construction work and kind of going from that construction job that I was really enjoying to this that I just kind of felt God called me to and led me to. Um, like all of a sudden to making drinks where like no one would have kind of guessed that I would have been working in a quick service industry or quick service restaurant business at all. I wouldn't have guessed that. But that's kind of where God like guided me to. So it's like really kind of neat how he just like opened up these doors step by step by step to come to where I'm at right now. Um,
So how did you
and
get
I guess
from the construction business to Chick-fil-A? Because like you're talking a bit about all these doors that are opening up, but that's like that seems like a particularly interesting um deviation, right, from where you were before.
completely, completely different deviation. Um, I go back to so we were actually on the trip together. So we were in Zambia together. We spent some time serving there at an orphanage there, Seeds of Hope. Shout out to our
Mm.
team over there. And while we were there, like Tim Bismeyer, who's a really good friend of mine now, we kind of started talking at that point, which is a year before I graduated, about like what he does, like what does project management look like what does construction management look like he's a partner of his business of the or an owner right now of the construction company that he was working with. And at that point, I just found it fascinating. Like, honestly, I was like really intrigued by big construction projects, commercial jobs, working with YVR, all these big clients. I was like, oh man, like this is really neat. I just kind of started planting seeds along the way. I feel like there's, I'm someone personally who I feel like we've been given an opportunity to like meet people and connect with people. I think that like being willing to open up a door and like letting God close the door is kind of how I've approached a lot of like the areas where I've gone to, of like doing what I can and what I'm able to, like kind of by God's strength within that, and like opening up doors, opening up opportunities, and then like kind of letting Him close those doors and close those decisions. So again, back to Zambia with Tim there, and then from that summer, come back to Vancouver, finish up my last year of university, where I was a community facilitator on campus. So like planning a lot of exciting events for people at Trinity, whether it was more for kind of like our smaller groups of our, like of the RAs on campus, and kind of planning events for dorms specifically, or kind of the entire campus as a whole. So that's kind of like the two branches, I guess, of like that role. But then coming out of that, I just kind of followed up with Tim, and Tim kind of reached out and said, hey, like, would you be interested in coming on board the team? So it's kind of cool how like the seed that was planted on a missions trip in Zambia was what ended up opening up the door, like literally 2 weeks before I graduated and finished school the other cool thing is like I'd been offered a different job at that time, and it would have been like traveling around America. Ended up turning that job down. And then literally a week later, Tim offered me this job. And it was, again, one of those things of like the Lord He had the opportunities there.
Was the job just not right? Like the reason that you turned it down?
Yeah, it was, it would have been an amazing, like a really cool opportunity. And it would have been something that I would have been able to travel with a worship concert, like a worship band, basically, around
Would
the
you
state.
have been playing or
No. I would
managing?
have been basically kind of like an ambassador for Trinity Western University. So
Okay.
one of my close buddies, Austin, he ended up doing that role and like absolutely crushed it. So like I think that like the Lord honestly like closed that door for me to put someone who's like better suited at that time for that role.
Mm.
So it's cool how like even like I prayed a lot about it, and I was like, I remember talking to one of my buddies for 4 hours, like it's 4 a.m. Got class the next morning at 7 a.m. Like we just talked. And I was like, man, Mitch, like I just don't know what to do. Like, what do I do? And then we just like kind of like prayed together there, and then it just clicked. It just sat like this peace moment of like I'm not supposed to go. Like, and it was I was okay. I was like, man, this is okay. Like it would have been an amazing experience, but I just felt this like overwhelming peace. Just like talking through it to the point where like the Lord just made it clear that I wasn't going to go on that trip. And then the next week is when he opened up the door with Tim, who I made that connection with him a year back. So Tim then offered me that position. Straight out of university was my first job or project that I was on with him, and his brother Dan was building a McDonald's. So like a pretty like good sized commercial project. And at that point, like I had done some leadership opportunities and stuff like that through university, and but I hadn't done a ton of construction management specifically. So there was a lot of nerves around it, a lot of
learning probably too.
man, huge learning curve.
Yeah, those are
You
not
got
easy
there's
projects
just
to learn.
no, not at all. Not a lot of forgiveness within them.
No.
But what I would say to that is Tim was like a huge example to me of like what it means to like have grace for someone, like to another person. And even if there was mistakes made, like he allowed me to win and to fail, and he like celebrated with me when I won, and he also allowed me to like kind of battle through that red zone of like, oh, like shoot, made a mistake, but he allowed me to do that, which then grew me in an even like faster pace. So like
Mm.
for me as a leader, looking back on that, I'm like, man, like I would want to be a leader who allowed the people around me to like make mistakes and didn't just say, like, hey, why did this not go this way? Like there's a different level of like leader and caregiver, I guess, and shepherd of your people. And there's like that grace that is bestowed upon the next person while still
Hmm.
taking that business ownership of the situation, the environment.
Yeah, because there's a lot of responsibility in leadership, but it's also sometimes a very unforgiving job because, you have so much responsibility that is obviously factored in with, you make more money and stuff because you have a lot more work to do and a lot more responsibility. But
Mhm.
the downside is if you make a mistake, it's like oftentimes all on your shoulders, you know.
Yeah.
How you respond with it is really important.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
working with Tim on the construction project, um, you mentioned that it clearly kind of helped you to grow as a leader and developed your leadership skills. Um, so it was a good project, but how did you go from that project to the Chick-fil-A project? Just which seem very different. I guess similar in their leadership element, but different in the manifestation of it.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And going from there, that transition was an interesting one, and it wasn't something that I sought out, to be totally honest with you. Um, I had done project management with Tim for about a year and a half or so,
Hmm.
um, and I wasn't looking for another job. Like nothing, like there was nothing going through my mind at that point of like, hey, like this is another opportunity. Maybe I'll go down this path. But this is kind of where I really saw God, I guess, using like past relationships, past kind of mentee mentorship connections. Specifically, like one of my good friends, Chris, now was kind of a mentee and friend at the time at university. And I remember I brought him on a trip to Hawaii with me, and we like built a good friendship there, and was able to like really kind of like walk alongside him and see him develop and grow. And from that point, like I remember him like he came to Trinity Western because he's like my community all the time. And the cool thing about that connection was it was it wasn't until a year later. My friend Chris, his dad, who's another one of like my mentors and like good friends now, he's kind of connected to they're from Sonoya, Georgia, so just south of Atlanta. Atlanta is where the like support center is of Chick-fil-A. So that support center is where all the talent acquisition, talent scouting, recruiting, all of that kind of stuff happens from there. And like that mentee that I kind of had at that time and like good friend now, like I said, his dad kind of said, hey, like he kind of put my name forward to some people in Atlanta and said, hey, like this guy in Vancouver, Lincoln, like maybe give him a shout, reach out. There's an opportunity with leadership development program. I know you guys are looking to grow in Vancouver, grow in Toronto. And like with those two places being hotspots,
Hmm.
one fortunate again was that there was not really any Canadians in the program. Up until this point, it was purely Americans in the program. And there was two Chick-fil-A's open in Toronto at this point. Both of them were doing amazing, like super, like just huge lineups, 45-minute lineups, hundreds of people in them because
Kind of
people
like the Tim Hortons in the States or whatever.
exactly. It's like there's
Yeah.
so much hype around it.
Yeah.
Um, so this transition was I got a call one day from a friend of mine who's worked at the support center and basically kind of reached out and said, hey, like this is kind of what LDP is, would you be interested in applying? Would be a cool opportunity, a great opportunity. So this was like back in September of last year.
Hmm.
And I again like wasn't looking for anything, or maybe it was like November of last year, and kind of just applied. And here's kind of where I think like the work of the Lord was like definitely make himself known within it. Was I again like I didn't really know what it was, and I wouldn't recommend this. But basically, my first interview, my first interview, I wasn't really taking it, I guess, as seriously as I wish I would have at the time. But even then, I feel like the Lord just like by His grace and His grace alone, kind of put some favor into that like video interview that it was. It was basically like me recording, kind of like us talking right now, but you would ask me a question and I would just have 30 seconds to think about an answer. And I'd have like 5 minutes to respond. And it was basically 40, like 35, 30, 40 minutes of like those kind of things. I'd see like a little prompt on the screen and I'd answer it. And I was in the corner of my, like you've been to my house, like I got a little cottage nook kind of thing in my kitchen. I was in like that little cottage nook, super warm and cozy. And I was in my blue denim shirt, like my cowboy shirt. And I was like, just like whoever looked at me was like, probably like, oh my goodness, who is this? Like, what is this guy doing?
It's like gotta go
But
feed the cattle before
yeah,
in the middle. Yeah.
exactly. You know, it's like Chick-fil-A and actually enjoy beef as well. Oh, that's a
Yeah, there
that's
you go.
this guy likes cows. No, eat more
Yeah.
chicken.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Eat chicken. That's supposed to be
um,
the motto. No.
so from there, I had a couple interviews where I ended up flying down to Atlanta twice. I had two sets of interviews in Atlanta, Georgia at the support center. Um, 2 days, like kind of two separate trips. One, had like three interviews back to back or four interviews back to back. And it was honestly like pretty intimidating, like some heavy hitting questions. And here's like one thing that I'd say to kind of anyone maybe listening even would be like the one thing that like especially like high level interviews, like a big piece of it is knowing your story well. Um, Knowing your testimony well, knowing the people that have been involved in your life well. Kind of anyone that I talk to about like applying for either like Chick-fil-A roles or applying for like other jobs, is just really knowing. And this is what like help myself kind of throughout the process was I like basically wrote down my story, like every key event from like the time I was 12 to now, being almost 23 and a half, almost 24. So like basically all the major events in my life, like knowing every single one, but not only knowing the events and could like share with you, Ben, like the events that I have, but within that, knowing who are the people that were involved in each one of those moments. And then not only kind of what was the person involved, but how did that impact change the way that I now live my life? And like that was the piece that really kind of like clicked. And in those interviews there's so many questions, man, about how like tell me your 5 minute story, tell me your 30-minute story, and then they just like pick you apart from that point on. However, like Chick-fil-A kind of hires on like the 3 C's of like character, competency, and chemistry. So like a lot of those, you kind of start to see like what is the kind of character of this individual. At that point, you also get to hear like what is the chemistry of them, like does their lifestyle, their practices, their hobbies, their interests, does this align with Chick-fil-A and being an owner operator, and kind of like go through the process like that.
I love that piece of like the finding your story and making it clear. Like having a cohesive narrative seems to be one of the most like controllable factors that consistently seems to be beneficial no matter where you are and what you're trying to do in your life. And it fits, as you say, it clicks too with the kind of idea of this podcast too, just that like human beings are storytellers and we just tell um, stories to make sense of our lives. And I feel like the more you can have like a overarching narrative of like this is what my life has been leading towards,
Mhm.
and obviously if it's true that's even better, and if it fits with what you're trying to apply for, then it's like, you know,
Mhm.
knocking the ball out of the park at that point, like.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. You're totally right in saying that. And I like that you said like remembering, like it made me think um, of how like it's so important to remember what we've done, remember like the little things in our life, because again, it's like storytelling is what ultimately we're made to do, is like tell stories, like tell stories to one another, have that kind of fellowship with one another, tell the stories about like how whatever it might be, like how God's worked in our lives, like how all this stuff, like this is what really impacts the next generation. It's like can I effectively tell the way that my life has been lived out, or like Ben's life has been lived out in a
Mhm.
way to someone else, where like they see, they're like, wow, like that's who Ben is, like wow, that's who Lincoln is, like wow, like that's so cool how like these little things happen in this way.
And it works both on the personal and like the brand level as well. Like a brand is functionally it's just a story, right? And so it's like why do certain brands work better than other ones? And because their story is more compelling, or because usually that's what it is, right? Like the chicken is probably not that much better than chicken elsewhere at Chick-fil-A. It's the story of like you come here and you're treated nicely, and you come here and like people care about you. That's the story of the brand, right? Maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the story of the brand, and why you personally felt that it was a good fit with you as well?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. So I like Chick-fil-A is a very unique place. So Truett Cathy, who is the founder of Chick-fil-A, and like honestly, I'll probably be fact checked on some of these like little details along the way. If so, I apologize, Chick-fil-A. But overall, like this is kind of the thing that like myself coming from Canada, observing it from a different lens, different view, like received from it, because we don't have Chick-fil-A. So all the things that I know are kind of just from reading Truett's books, reading books from like high level leaders within Chick-fil-A, things like that. Anyways, coming
Mm-hmm.
back, um, like the founder of Chick-fil-A was a super humble man. Like, and even the current owners of Chick-fil-A, the family, the Cathy family, incredibly humble people, like just such servant leaders. If they come to your store, they come to a restaurant, like you'll see them serving drinks. You'll see them picking up garbage in the parking lot. Like those kind of leaders who there's nothing too low for them to do. They will always do it because that's like taking extreme ownership of their brand and setting
Mm-hmm.
that example right away. So like instantly there's that kind of humility within it of that's just who they are. Like that's who the brand is.
Kind of
Um,
sounds like the I don't know if you've ever heard the Walmart like story of when the founder went to the store and he got like arrested or whatever because he was like measuring the lengths of the aisles and stuff. Just like super like yeah, sometimes there's just a ridiculous amount of humility that you have to have as like an owner, just to be like people think this person's crazy, like there's no way this guy's the owner, all right? No, he
yeah,
is, or she
yeah,
is, or they, or whatever. Yeah.
totally. And like and with Chick-fil-A specifically, it kind of all starts at the corporate purpose and then kind of goes through the visions, the corporate vision and the corporate mission currently, and then our values. So like our corporate purpose right now, and this is what like Truett Cathy, the founder, came up with was to glorify God and be a faithful steward of all that has been entrusted to us, to give everyone who comes in contact with Chick-fil-A a remarkable experience. It's like that's kind of like the big, or have a positive impact with everyone who comes in contact with Chick-fil-A. So it's like those two pieces of like what does it look like as a business to like especially a massive like a growing, exciting business like Chick-fil-A to do those two things, to glorify God in what we do and like serve him in what we do. But at the same time, like be good stewards of what's been entrusted to us. And like that stewardship piece is a big piece, I would say, of we steward our people well, we steward our businesses well, we steward our customers well. And like that's kind of the hope within kind of the Chick-fil-A model. Like our normal operator model is way different than a normal franchise model,
Mm-hmm.
where again, it's kind of those three C's of like what is the character, competency, and chemistry, and how does that align with Chick-fil-A's corporate purpose of like wanting to care for, and our corporate vision is like becoming the world's most caring company. Um, so that's kind of the two things that Chick-fil-A, like every decision that we make, it comes from that vision and that goal. Um,
It's so kind of counter well, it's not counterintuitive at all in the sense of like if you do understand the truth that caring for people is always like a win-win for everyone. But there's the stereotype of like the callous callous like business owner who doesn't really care about people, and so it seems counterintuitive
yeah,
from a first glance, I think.
and that's the biggest thing is I was kind of trying to figure out, like you asked, like how did Chick-fil-A fit into my own story? Um, and when I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out like what kind of business I wanted to be part of, I was back and forth, to be honest, between whether I was feeling called into some kind of like full-time ministry, business as mission role, or like just some kind of like tent making job. So like kind of some sort of business internationally, maybe. Like I really was like exploring all these different kind of areas of business, um, or like ministry. And then I was like, how can I use the ways that I feel like God's gifted me in these different areas, both with people as well as with business leadership, with leadership
Mm-hmm.
of individuals, and like kind of managing people, and like vision casting with like a successful business. And like that's kind of where like seeing someone like Chick-fil-A, um, it just kind of clicked. And I'll even share this. Like um, I remember when I was kind of deciding between, do I stick at the construction company that I was working with Tim, or come to Chick-fil-A. I had this like 2 week period where I just felt like sick to my stomach. I was like, man, I don't want to make a decision. Like it was like by God's grace, I had two opportunities, and it was like Him putting those opportunities there. Like I didn't know which one I was gonna do, and
And
like
it's like mutually exclusive. Like once you make the decision, you can't kind of go back.
yeah, and you're committing, like you're committing to one or the other, and like that. I don't know. I think that humans in general, it's like decision making is hard. Like it really is
Yeah.
hard. Um, I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but at least I overthink things sometimes.
Oh, all the time. And it had like psychologically too. It's like a very well observed phenomenon, like decision anxiety. And it happens with the smallest decisions and with big decisions, which is why, um, I think that it's really beneficial to kind of outsource as many small or unimportant things as possible and to just, and also, because if you focus too much on little decisions, you get, caught up in them. And then when you have to make a big decision, it's too big to address. And so you just flippantly decide one. But if you, get rid of all the small decisions, you're better able to focus on actually directing that attention. And as you said, that, gut wrenching attention, the attention that doesn't make you feel good, that actually is painful to those big decisions, which is, I think, what you should be doing. If you're not feeling like, if it doesn't feel proportional to the kind of decision you're making, how intense your somatic symptoms are, you're probably not thinking about it the right way.
Yeah, man, totally, totally. And like the challenge with it too is the fact that, um, at least for myself, speaking from my experience, that sometimes a lot of decisions, they aren't like that massive of decisions, but it comes from this internal fear of like either failing, or this internal fear of being wrong, like honestly just making the wrong call. And like that's kind of where I've got to
Mm-hmm.
just remind myself and like really just like speak some honest truth to myself about who is putting my steps in front of me. Like who is the one that has established my steps? Like who is the one that has control over everything? I just gotta remind myself like that's the Lord. Like every decision that I make, good or bad, is like that's God establishing those opportunities, putting me in that position. And even like to be in that place of tension is that's Him putting me in that tension. But remembering from like removing like the fear from it, and like just kind of resting in like this piece of the Lord has put me in this position. What now? Um, and making that. Yeah. Sorry. What are you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, like, on kind of on a tangent to what you were just saying about that, it reminded me of the two things that you were talking about as the not the vision but the pragmatic kind of goal of Chick-fil-A, and how they're talking about how one of them was, just giving everyone a really great experience, but the other one was, you said, glorifying God. So I was just curious, like, how does that manifest itself in a like an essentially public sector secular kind of company that can't necessarily like force like a religiosity element to it, but they can still act on principles of Christianity, as is kind of ingrained in making the company. So how does that work in a kind of pragmatic sense of dealing with people?
Yeah. I mean, I think that like so to I guess kind of clarify, Chick-fil-A was founded on biblical principles. Um, Chick-fil-A wouldn't, it's not like a Christian company. Like there's no
Yeah.
biblical, like an actual, like a business can't be a religion. Like a business can't be a Christian, because like a Christian is like someone who follows Christ, right? So like
Yeah.
I guess kind of separating those three first off to kind of provide that clarity from that standpoint. And Chick-fil-A is like it is an incredibly welcoming place. Like there's such amazing diversity within Chick-fil-A. I think that is what is needed to have an effective business, to have
Hmm.
different thoughts. But
And
in
founding
terms
something
of
based off of principles is very different, as you said, than founding it than like, say, trying to run a church or something, or trying to run like a mosque or whatever, like it's obviously like you go there for that. But Chick-fil-A is, it can't be that because people go there to get chicken. So, you know.
Well, here's the thing that I always tell my team. I always tell them like, hey, like, so for example, if I had a new team member I just hired,
Hmm.
if I just brought him or her on, and they're someone who's out in the drive-through taking orders for me, they're my first point of contact all the time. So like instantly, my goal is to welcome that person in. So like I have kind of three different pieces to welcoming in a guest. So like I'll usually like practice this with them in the drive-through, walk them through like, hey, like our goal first off is to have that warm welcome. So like always want to be like, hey, like Ben, it's like welcome to Chick-fil-A. Like my name is Lincoln. Like how can I serve you today? So instantly there's that aspect of my goal is to make you feel warm, welcome at home, and like ultimately the word is hospitality. So what does it mean to be hospitable and welcome people in? So when you ask like how does like my personal Christian faith live itself out, or even like in general at Chick-fil-A, how is that kind of lived out in the business? There's so many little things along the way. So like hospitality, like just being a place of hospitable nature. Um,
Hmm.
and when I care for my team members, like Chick-fil-A's whole mentality behind people is it's usually it's kind of people make decisions on labor, people make decisions on scheduling, on the top and bottom line, on inventory, like all these different things around purely how is this going to affect my profit. Chick-fil-A, like, and then it's like the people and all these things based on how much I can afford, whereas
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A
usually they're
flip
variables within like the economic machine, right?
and yeah, and Chick-fil-A like really just flips it upside down, honestly. Like it's completely flipped upside down where like our kind of belief within it and an approach to it is if we like care for our people well, like teach our people to care for our guests well, ultimately people come for the food, but they come back for the service. So like
Yeah.
that's the piece that I tell like every team member is like, hey, like our guests come for the food, but they come back for Ben because they want to come see Ben. And like we've had people in my drive-through right now saying, hey, like where's this person at? Where's this person at? Because they just love talking to them. And like where can you go that you get that level of communication and connection with someone at a quick service restaurant? Um,
Yeah. I mean,
even
I'm genuinely interested to hear more about that too, because obviously, I mean, for Canadians, they might not know this, but like Chick-fil-A is, if I'm not, I have to double check. You might know better than I am if it's the fastest growing fast food chain in the US, but I know at least in some states it is, and it is overall like one of the fastest growing. And it's
it,
overall one of the biggest fast food restaurants, and it's not because it has more options than other ones, because it actually has significantly less. It's solely because of how good the service is.
exactly. And like um, that's the thing is that it is the fastest. It's incredible to see the growth, especially during COVID. Here's the example. A huge reason why Chick-fil-A saw the massive growth that it saw during COVID, where everyone else was getting smoked, was people trust Chick-fil-A. Like
Mm,
really simple. Like Chick-fil-A has built a trust with the people that where even in like 2008 when the market crashed, here's a good example as well of people stopped going to these like super expensive restaurants because a lot of people couldn't afford it. But where could you go that's like the next closest thing to like a high dining restaurant for a good price? Like that's Chick-fil-A. Like people, there's this level of like, I want to go to a place where I'm welcomed in. I am like taken care of well. People like we wait on our tables throughout the day for for people that come in, like guests that come in, like we'll grab
mm,
our foot long pepper grinder and we will like grind fresh pepper on for you because we care about you, Ben. Like
yeah.
we want to see you enjoy your experience and like feel loved. Like that's like the biggest thing is like does this person feel cared for while they're here? Um, so like I
Yeah.
guess the growth of Chick-fil-A, like, we've seen an incredible growth, and I think that it is because of how much focus was on the people, that investment from the front end, that for the first honestly long time operators weren't making, it wasn't like a super profitable business. As soon as that like people piece clicked and people like started to recognize how amazing that is, that's really when things started to like boom, take off.
So can you give us like a crash course of like Chick-fil-A history, like what year it kind of started in and like when it started to become this better, like when people started to recognize the people oriented and really high level service element of it that, instigated the boom?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. So basically, so again, Truett Cathy was a founder, entrepreneur by heart. Like when he was
Hmm.
younger, he used to just tow his red wagon around, and he would put like he'd buy like a 6 pack of Coca-Colas, and then he'd sell the Cokes for like a cent more per Coke, just walking down the street with his red wagon. And then he realized that if he could put ice underneath it, he could sell it for 2 cents more. So he just like little innovative things all the time. He always wanted to run a restaurant. His first restaurant that he opened, I want to say it was in the like 48 or like early maybe 56, kind of in like that ballpark somewhere,
Okay.
like mid 50s maybe.
And was this
Uh,
a Chick-fil-A restaurant or not a Chick-fil-A restaurant?
so he actually started what's called the Dwarf House Grill, and basically it was a great restaurant, but it was like very people focused. Like he very humble beginnings, like I said, and kind of throughout it, his goal was to have a hospitable nature of like caring for people and for people to feel cared for from the very beginning. And he never sacrificed, never was willing to sacrifice like how do I put this? Like basically was willing to sacrifice the bottom line to care for people, knowing
Mm.
that people is what is important. And like here's one of his favorite verses is a great name is to be desired rather than great riches. And like I just love that he kind of
Mm.
lived by that verse a little bit of like that's how he ran his business and his company was like how do we build great names rather than like just seeking wealth. Um,
And the thing is, that's economically smart too. Like it does seem, as mentioned earlier, and about the counterintuitive piece, it kind of seems counterintuitive. But once people recognize like the like quantifiable, it doesn't see, it's not as easily quantifiable, but there is an absolute value of like building a good reputation, and in the long run, it's always worth more than whatever small bit of profit you might have missed out on, because people come back because the story is cohesive, and in order to do that you got to build a reputation, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, like Chick-fil-A's reputation, it took a while to build it, but then once
Hmm.
it was built, it blew up. So basically, he built these dwarf houses, and then in the I want to say like 58 or like 68, 65, maybe is in like that ballpark. Was he built two dwarf houses, and then one of his dwarf houses burnt down. So he had one dwarf house again, but he just wouldn't quit. Like he just wanted another, like just wanted to continue to grow, continue to innovate, continue to care. And then at that point, this is like one of my favorite. I love this story. So basically, he kind of started Chick-fil-A, like started another brand. So while he was at that dwarf house, came up with a chicken sandwich, which is like the original chicken sandwich. Like that's what it's known for, being like the original like true chicken sandwich. Um, and Truett, he invented it. Like he basically invented the way that it's cooked, the coder, like everything about it was like that was his piece. Was this like mix between like a nice tasty bun with two pickles and like a nice buttered bun with a nice like kind of sweet and savory fillet, which is like a really unique texture, like just like a really unique tasting sandwich. Um, so at that point, he came up with Chick-fil-A. So Chick-fil-A came to be, and the first locations were actually in malls. So it wasn't even like a freestanding restaurant like you see a lot of Chick-fil-A's now.
Hmm.
Um, and these malls, the first one of the first malls that he went into, he well, kind of backing up, I guess, a little bit. His first week having the Dwarf House open, he went like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and he was like open to close, available like during the evenings. Like it was just going. And then he got to Sunday, and he just said like, we can't do this. Like this is the day of rest. This is like there's a reason. He basically he felt the reason why God said rest. Um,
Because the
and like that's kind of where Chick-fil-A Sundays began, like
mm.
from the beginning.
And today
So
they're still
it was
closed
kind
on
of
Sundays, right?
it will never open on Sundays. Yeah, no, Chick-fil-A's will never open on Sundays except for like humanitarian reliefs or like big things that happen, emergencies, that kind of stuff, where
Yeah.
that's an operator basis kind of thing. But here's the cool thing about it, Ben, was
Yeah.
that the first mall that they went to, they actually denied Chick-fil-A entering the mall, and they said that like you guys aren't open on Sunday, like your sales won't be good enough, like basically said like because you're not open, like you guys won't be profitable enough. Um, and another mall like nearby, like they said, okay, like we'll give you guys a shot, like have this like little space, see how it goes, that kind of thing. That Chick-fil-A outsold every other restaurant by like 3 times, like anything else that Chick-fil-A outsold it all. So like
Wow.
it was just like such a cool example of like I really do believe that that's God honoring someone who honored him. Like I really do believe
Mm.
that. And then that from there kind of expanded through different malls, and then eventually kind of transitioned to freestanding restaurants, specifically in like the Atlanta area first, and then kind of the Southeast, and then started just expanding to the Midwest and growing to the West Coast, expanded in the Northeast, and growing to 2,600 stores right now in that ballpark.
Wow.
2 stores in Vancouver. We had a restaurant in Puerto Rico opening up. Plans for a lot of like international expansion from this point now, and that's kind of where like when things started really blowing up was um, yeah, I don't know, like kind of I'd say over the last like 10, 15, 20 years from what I've heard, but like definitely in the last like 10 years has been this massive spike of people just seeing like not only how incredibly caring Chick-fil-A is, but now that same like Southern hospitality is being spread throughout all of America and now up into Canada.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Those are so satisfying, those stories of like being told that it's not going to work, you can't do that, and then um just going with what you know your gut or what you feel is right, and then it just works out. A lot of times I feel like the value of sticking to something, whatever it is just super like well rewarded, you know? Like if you have a conviction about like this thing needs to be done, like where we need to take a day off on Sundays, it probably also helps in like the productivity element as well, because then people aren't working 7 days a week. You know, they're working 6 days a week and they get more time to, you know,
Yeah,
prepare for then the next day. Then you come back with like more energy kind of idea.
yeah, and like I think as well. So Truett, the founder, um, he there's like so many like little things that he did that was just led with amazing humility, amazing grace, but like such a hungry businessman, like just wanted to grow, see something happen. um I wish I could have met him. I really do wish I could have met him, but um I think one example is like he taught Sunday school like every single year from the time he was like in his 20s until he passed away. Like every single Sunday, he would teach Sunday school. Every single week, he was involved in church. He started a foundation called the Windshape Foundation, which is like it has a lot of different branches of like marriage like courses. It has like a lot of he's always been a huge individual. He always was an individual who like pursued youth. Like I think it's a big reason why he wanted to go into the restaurant business was this opportunity to like really like grow and mentor and challenge and disciple young leaders.
Hmm.
Uh, he wrote a book called "It's Better to Build Boys Than to Mend Men." And it's like one of my favorite books. It's super short, but it's like this amazingly challenging book about how important it is to like build into and like challenge and grow like young boys, because it's way easier to like speak truth to someone at a receptive age than to mend a man who's broken, who's done all this crazy stuff. And like just
Hmm.
there's that importance of like discipleship and walking alongside like the youth and the young leaders who are those next generation leaders, and like challenging them and like just loving and caring for them at the same time.
And on a societal level too, like the benefits of that, you know, are not trivial at all, right? Because a lot of like statistically speaking, it's mostly young men who are going to be responsible for crime of any sort. And so like investing in people and building them to be, you know, moral people and people with, a good kind of understanding of the right thing to do, there's going to be less of that um,
Mhm.
crime and less of that violence and stuff. And I think that you know, that's probably like just a useful thing to remember. Um, Obviously, it seems like um, there's pressures that push against that element of like, building strong, boys, but I think that it's always going to be beneficial from both a societal level and like emotional level too, right?
Hmm. Yeah, what would you say is pushing against that?
I think that there's some pressures that like, you need to let people figure out who they are on their own without like indoctrinating them. Some people maybe have that belief for whatever reasons. I think a lot of times people have had bad experiences with being told to do something through institutions like a church or um, other religions or different governmental institutions. But I think that I think the principle has gotten caught up with the examples of the times that it can go wrong, and that's something that's always dangerous because there's always going to be examples of things that go wrong, and you can't lump a principle of like building people to be um, you know a certain way just because someone who claimed to be doing that actually didn't, if that makes sense.
Hmm. If you could break that down to some like example, I'd appreciate to try and kind of give myself, I guess, a mental picture as to kind of what you're explaining.
For
I
sure,
think
for
I might
sure.
have understand, but yeah.
No, I'm just saying that like um, the idea of like building young men, I think that's a great idea. I think it's really important, good thing to remember. I think on the other hand, there's been there's been people who, maybe have been trying to build young men and they've built them to be too kind of like toxic masculinity or something like that, and you get like lumped into a category. Or alternatively, like within an institution like the church, building men to think a certain way that maybe is like, you know, wouldn't give women the same kind of rights as men or something like that. And sometimes people lump these behaviors into together, I guess is what I'm saying. But it's more so just like, I guess the social narrative right now wouldn't necessarily be like happy to hear what you said, but I was just agreeing with you and saying I think you're right, even though there's might be reasons why people would disagree with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you
I mean,
found that at all, like where you've been working?
um, I think, I mean, there's definitely people who push back against like like beliefs, I suppose. People who push back against that idea of um, I'll separate myself, my own personal, I guess, like beliefs or thoughts from Chick-fil-A now. Um, but I think that like my own personal approach is like, what does it look like to um, ultimately stand firm on what is true, stand firm on what has been a truth for a long period of time, that hasn't moved, that is unchanging. Even though cultures do change, even though the societies do change, like what has been a piece and something that hasn't changed. I think ultimately, like even though there are differences, even though that things have shifted and moved, and cultural narratives have moved, that to be honest, like this is my own thoughts on it, is that the cultural narrative, it really hasn't changed as to like what the rebellion is. And like by what I mean by rebellion is a rebellion against like what is the truth. So like what is like that look like? And for me personally, it's an aspect of like what does it mean to like care and love and serve my neighbor as myself, and
Hmm.
honor and glorify God in my actions and what I do. And do I do that every single day? No, by no means, Ben. By no means. Far from it.
Yeah.
Um, but what I do believe in is like the grace of God is something that I can't understand. I won't understand. And if it wasn't for that grace, um, dude, I would be a lost cause, man. I really would, because I'm undeserving of it. And like that's what grace is. It's like I'm undeserving of something, and I'm still given it. And that's kind of that aspect of like why would I why would I then not treat my neighbor in that same way, like with that same amount of grace? So I guess kind of tying it back is like, when it comes down to in business, when it comes down to in ministry, when it comes down to in life, when it comes down to conversation like this, like what does it look like to treat everyone with like honor, dignity, and respect, to care for, to like really respect everyone and like care for everyone and love everyone,
Hmm.
but at the same time stand firm in what is true and stand firm in what is a belief. And this is like a separate piece from that whole book. This is a separate piece from that topic.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's really wise actually. The understanding how, well, on one level, how to separate your own personal beliefs from a belief that is necessary to run an institution, and to what degree, your own personal beliefs can be reflected in an institution, right? Because we all know that we have biases. We know it psychologically, we know it, I think, emotionally too. We know that there's some things we believe that are right, and we know there's some things we believe that, maybe we're not as certain about. And even some things that we are certain about, I think it's just important to recognize that, there's a lot of factors that are hard to tell. And there's a lot of things, like I know time and again in my life, there's been times when I thought something really strongly, and then a new piece of evidence came up, and I realized, oh, maybe I need to think about this slightly differently. But I think that having a strong conviction and incorporating that into a business is like super admirable, and it's something you don't see maybe as often as, or as specifically, in as an example, as Truett Cathy with Chick-fil-A, right? It seems like a very um, good thing to have as his business model, like, empathy and respect, and just giving people like a good experience, and loving people regardless of where they're coming from, kind of idea. Super like yeah, super interesting, and it definitely seems to fit well with kind of your goals, for having known you, and how much you like to invest in people, and to just, spend time talking, and really speaking into people. And so I think that's a really neat fit.
Yeah, and it's been it's been a challenge. Like I'm not gonna lie, it's been hard, and it's been a lot of like long hours this past month, for example. Like there's the first 3 weeks I was here, I was working from like 4:35 in the morning to like 1 in the morning the next day, because I couldn't stop because I didn't have people. So like you just gotta, it's seasonal, and like there's days where you go hard and get 3 hours of sleep, and then
Yeah.
there's time. And then but the thing is, Ben, this is the piece that like doesn't change, is that um, I could be having those long days, but I have one conversation with someone that's in the back breading. I have one conversation with someone who's sitting down for lunch, and I just sit down with them. One conversation with someone that's in the drive-through between orders, that just have a chance to just like honestly just like love and care for, and walk alongside and like learn the life of, as well as like challenge to live with purpose. Um,
Hmm.
and like Chick-fil-A is very unique in the sense that like yeah, it has like certain principles that it was built upon, but um, the business, not even the business model, like the business model of caring for others and being the world's most caring company, like it just emphasizes that opportunity to do so. And like whether down the road, like I'm not by any means like, oh, Link's gonna be an operator. Like that's like honestly, like this is like the
Hmm.
approach that I had with this is that um, I feel like if God leads me to that point, then He will, and if He doesn't, that's okay as well, um, and that's fine. Like honesty is okay, and then He'll put me somewhere where He wants me to be. And like the peace I feel right now, just saying that, is like it transcends my understanding. Like I don't know why I feel that peace saying that, but I truly feel like so much peace around that, knowing that whether I'm here at Chick-fil-A or whether I'm doing some other job or whatever it might be, um, if I do those things of like really care for people and love people and serve people, even though I fail at it every single day, even what I'm doing right now, like having like that kind of motivation and like kind of like goal within it, it really does. I do believe that God has like honored Chick-fil-A and in the growth that it has seen, because they kept people at the front, even when it seemed like not wise from a business standpoint to just like keep investing in the people. Chick-fil-A kept investing in the people, kept loving the people, kept serving the people. And like on this back end, it's been so, so, so cool to see how like that aspect of like servant leadership, like true servant leadership, has created like the fastest growing fast food restaurant, quick service restaurant in the industry.
Hmm.
It's third right now, only to McDonald's and Starbucks. But like in terms of like a per restaurant um, amount that it produces is like it's incredible. Like there's no comparison to how much Chick-fil-A produces, just because people come, people want to be served well, people want to be cared for, and there's like a deep root to why that happens. Like there's a deep
Hmm.
root that people come back for that.
Hmm.
So much beyond just, oh, like I want to be like treated kindly. It's like we as human beings are built to be loved. Like we are built to be cared for. And it's like, where are we going for that care? Like when it comes down to it, where are we going for that care?
And the world we live in can be hard, right? It can be a challenging place a lot of times, and in your day to day, like, and the kind of kindness that and the kind of love that someone might experience at Chick-fil-A might be the only time that someone really cares for them in their day. So I feel like that principle of if everyone thought that way, if everyone said, I might be the one person that could make this person's day just a little bit better,
Yeah.
then everyone maybe would, be doing a little bit better. I just wanted to ask one thing about the kind of growth and the relationship to the pandemic. Um, do you think that there's been kind of do you think that the reason that it's grown so much during the pandemic is related to the kind of isolation that people are feeling and the need to just connect?
Yeah, I mean, like I do believe that Chick-fil-A is trusted more than honestly any other business that I know, like
Hmm.
restaurant business or not, um, which is I think one reason why obviously the growth is there is because people want to, like, they feel comfortable and safe knowing that we take extra precautions across the entire chain. The consistency is incredible for like COVID procedures, things like that. So like one, they know that people are clean. We we hire people that are professional, presentable, and that are safe, that are constantly having their every single hour, everything's getting disinfected, like all those different things that we put in place to like care for our guests. Like those little tiny details is caring for our guests. Like that's my whole lens. Every decision that I make from a business standpoint, how is my guest's experience going to be better than the day before? It's like every system that I put in place, every personnel decision, it's is this person going to increase the guest experience? Is this person going to help this guest to be faster in the drive-through, faster, all these different things going on is purely through that lens, safe food and like caring for my guests as best as I can. Um, so in terms of like the pandemic, that growth, um, I would say that not only from a like trust standpoint, but like from an efficiency standpoint, Chick-fil-A has mastered throughput. Um, it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal to walk into the back of a Chick-fil-A, a fast-moving, high-moving Chick-fil-A, and see how dialed it is. Like it's incredible to be a part of this machine that just moves so smooth. And like from a business standpoint, like the reason that a lot of this is happening, especially during COVID, was um, a lot of inside dining rooms were shut down. So what that meant was, rather than having this like stream of chicken coming from the back and then splitting off half to the dining room, half to the drive-through, all of a sudden you have one whole branch shut down. So all of your energy is flowing purely through one direction. So like that one split, that's that split right there that happens, like that little split that this is like an opportunity for a big bottleneck. So like every little, like if we can
Mm,
minimize the amount of complications in a system, then
yeah.
instantly like you're leaning it down, you're bringing it down to the place of I just have to have people in those positions that know how to do it at the proper way, proper speeds, and it will move quick. So, like an
So did
example, when I transitioned the rest, sorry, yeah, go for it.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask if Chick-fil-A kept all of their employees on and then just, focused on increasing the efficiency of the one route rather than the two.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any that, other than like restaurants that like because of the pandemic, some malls closed down, like the
Okay, yeah, yeah.
physical malls closed down. So like some of them moved away in that regard. I haven't heard of any restaurants that have like laid people off
That's
because
super cool.
it's not a matter of like we're producing 20% on average more per restaurant. Like some of the returns are just it's incredible. And like I think that there's a lot of factors behind that. I think big picture, that's the Lord's work within that, and honoring the groundwork that Chick-fil-A has built over the course of the last 50 years. Um, but yeah, in terms of the people, like I would say the people and personnel, um, I've hired 40, 48, 50 people in the last month, to the Chick-fil-A that I'm at right now, and brought them on board, retrained them all, get them in the system. And we've had a single team member leave that we hired on in the last month. So like the turnover rate is incredibly low.
Wow.
The retention rate is incredibly high.
Just
And like,
mostly because of like the culture that's fostered.
yeah, it's nature versus nurture, man. It's this aspect of like if we like our belief, like I really do believe that if I care for my team member well, um, if my team member leaves, that's my fault. That's my fault because I either one haven't set a clear expectation in that interview, like two I haven't given them this what they need to succeed, or yeah, like ultimately it's like those two things. Like I haven't set that clear expectation, or I haven't communicated that well, or I haven't given them the personnel, the system, the process, whatever it may be, or the equipment that is needed to
Mm.
effectively run that ship. And that falls onto me. It really does. Like I've got to take ownership of that person leaving, and that's something that like
Mm.
I believe if I put that in place, if I care for those people, if I care for that process well, then that person will want to continue to stay and continue to serve our guests well.
I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Jocko Willink or if you've ever read Extreme Ownership.
I have. That's one of
Have
my
you?
favorite books.
I
I
love
love it.
that book. Yeah, it reminds me a lot of what you're saying about leading both up and down the chain of command, as Jocko would say, and like um, how doing that then makes people want to work harder for you, and then you get better efficiency. And it just seems, even if it wasn't the case, it would be better because then your day's nicer because everyone's doing better. But you get the double kill two birds, or I should say feed two birds with one seed. I heard that one recently instead of kill two birds with one stone. Um, yeah, so it's like you're winning on multiple fronts because you have people wanting to work harder, you're investing in people, and then you guys are both just trying to make each other work better and better and better, and then you get this well-oiled machine, as you say.
It's amazing, and like that's the cool thing too. Like you're hitting the nail on the head. Is this aspect of um, ultimately like you start to see when the standard is clearly communicated, and that not even the expectation. Like I try to avoid the word expectation, but I try and set a high standard for my team, and I hold the team to a high standard because it's the standard. It's not like not anymore of like, oh, I expect you to reach this thing. It's, hey guys, like this is our standard. And the reason that it's the standard is because if we do this well in this area, our guests are going to be that much more pleased and served and cared for in this process. So like the reason that I have you cleaning this machine at this level every single day, as opposed to like cutting this one corner, is because if we don't do that in this single way, that fillet that comes out on the other end, it will have a little bit of a burnt flavor. And just imagine yourself on that end. Are you going to want that fillet with like a little bit of like a crispness to it that isn't fully like fresh from that fryer? Things like that, where it's like how every step of the way, like we have to take ownership of it. Like we really have to take that ownership of it. And if my guest complains to my team leaders, to my managers, I have to be willing to go talk to that guest and explain what's going wrong, because that falls back onto me. And like that's
Hmm.
and you need that. Like we need that, like communicate the expectation well, to have like constant follow-up and accountability, like checking in.
Yeah.
um,
I love that, like taking responsibility too, right? Like there might be things that can happen that are out of your control, but if the default is to take responsibility, even for things that are out of your control, you know, then there's less blame game because it's just, even, yeah, I'm taking responsibility. It might have been my fault. It might have been out of my control. Maybe it's
Mhm.
better to figure out which ones are truly your fault so you can do better next time. But worst case, like, even then, you're just taking responsibility for everything that you could do, Something's not wiped. You take
Mhm.
responsibility. You're like, hey, I have a second. I can do that right now, kind of idea.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And with that, it's like, if I expect the standard to be hit, if I expect my team members to be living up to this standard, am I living up to that standard myself?
Mm,
Am I, so the way that
leading
I,
by example kind of thing.
every single person that I coach through anything with, I always kind of have this like picture. I'm like, if we set the standard here, like there's a good chance that whoever's like we're teaching is going to come to like this point. But if we set the standard like a super low bar, they're going to be like literally out of our picture right now. Like we can't even see it. It's like that low. So like that
Gonna be
piece
terrible.
of holding to that high standard, but like leading and communicating with grace and explaining the why behind it.
Mm,
Uh, it ties in all of those pieces. Like there's a reason why our standard is high. There's a reason why I want to see you grow. Like I want to see you develop in this way. Like a lot of it is like I see, for example, like I got a team member right now who he's coachable, like which is a huge gift to have a team member who's coachable and wants to grow and learn. Um, and he's expressed a little bit of interest in like leadership opportunities, potential to like grow in those ways. So with someone like him, for example, I can like he's kind of given me by expressing that interest of wanting to grow, like potentially seek a leadership opportunity. Um, he's basically given me permission to hold him to a higher standard. So
mm.
with that is going to the back and saying, hey, like why is this way? Like, hey, walk me through this. Hey, walk me through like what's your thought process behind this? Why is this happening this way?
But he knows the reason he's being held to a higher standard is because you're trying to grow him and not because you're trying to knock him down, and having that mutual trust, it's like
And that's what
huge.
totally, and like that's what you got to build before giving that kind of feedback, is you've got to have that relationship built where he knows that I am out for his best interest, and me
Mm.
giving feedback is, hey, like John, whatever his name might be, hey, I will verbally say it to him. I'll say, hey John, like if I give you feedback, it's for two reasons. One, because I know you're capable of so much more, man. I know you are, and I want to see you grow to that potential and just maximize your potential, whether it's at this level you're at right now or if it's a leadership position. I want to see you maximize that potential within you. And two, I want to see our guests cared for and served well. And you doing it at this level and not here is going to really go that extra mile where that guest will be served well and they will feel cared for. So like
Mm.
those kind of two visuals of like basically they're kind of giving us that opportunity. And I think that the reason why Chick-fil-A, how it brings on such amazing talent, is because we pursue talent. Like we pursue people who want to excel. And that's kind of like where you start to see like kind of a bit of a sifting process happening, where is if the standard is always set to a high place, and we're leading to a high place and communicating to a high place and explaining how that impacts the entire business, at that point, people who don't want to achieve that, like I was still
Mm.
care for that person. I was still pouring to that person. However, you start to see some people like, I don't want to be a part of something that's this level. Like this is too quick or whatever it might be. So at that point, like someone B who is like, oh man, like I'm experiencing all this growth in this cool place. They call their buddy up and instantly, boom, they filter in another high level person who wants to grow. So like it's
Because
really
people who work hard tend to also associate with other kind of hardworking people. Is that the
exactly,
kind of idea?
exactly.
I love
Talent
that.
attracts talent. It really does. So
Yeah.
it's cool seeing like being able to be a part of that kind of growth for a young person. Like I
Hmm.
see that as just as valuable and like honestly more important than the bottom line of like what I'm producing. I really do feel like a
Yeah.
stewardship around like needing to steward the people, but also stewarding the business. But it starts with the people and investing in the people. The process is what gives us an opportunity to serve my guest well. And if these pieces are in place, all of a sudden, all this stuff, it can't happen properly. So um, it gets me fired up talking about it, Ben,
Yeah,
because
man. It's
it's my life,
awesome.
man. It's what I do.
It makes me want to like grab a chicken sandwich or you know.
Oh, come on, you gotta.
Yeah, when do you open them up here, man? Come on.
Yeah, give me
Um,
a,
when
yeah.
you were describing the like the making the sandwich, it's like you don't want it to be too burned. I was like, oh man, like he's got to stop or I'm gonna get hungry here.
Fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man, I love that. That's awesome. I want to ask about like the best and worst kind of parts of learning to be a leader, but before I we talk about that, um, I was just thinking back to when I mentioned extreme ownership. Do you have any like top five or something leadership books that you could recommend, or like even they don't have to be leadership. If you have any other kind of really good ones that you've read recently.
Hmm. Oh man, extreme ownership is like rocked me pretty good. So I would, if anyone who hasn't read Extreme Ownership, um, dive in. Like
Yeah.
it'll, one of my like favorite quotes from that book was, "There's no bad teams, there's only bad leaders." And I was just, oh, dagger,
Yeah.
just like woof. Like that's
Yeah. Heavy.
so
Heavy.
every time I point that finger, I got to realize that they are under like that's the person I'm stewarding. Anyways,
And how much
um,
easier it is to point the finger than to recognize that, 9 times out of 10, it's probably you.
and
you know?
if I'm leading that way, that's the kind of person I'm going to attract to the business. And if I'm
Yeah.
leading an ownership piece, I'm going to attract people who are taking ownership. And there's a huge difference in that. But
Mm.
I think leadership books, and I'm trying to like look around my room right now, see what I got in the area. Um, Honestly, leadership books, I've kind of a lot of, um, in the last couple of months at least, it's been a lot of like leadership growth in the moment, like it literally just learning how
Yeah.
to work with people. But I have been reading a book which has been kind of like not, it's sort of leadership, I guess, involved ish. Um, Not really. That's okay. So
It's
like
all good.
it's an absolute classic. It's called The Pilgrim's Progress. You might have heard of it.
Oh yeah, I've read that one. That's
So,
John Bunyan, right? He wrote in like 1600. I think that was like the best-selling book of that like time period or something. It's like very, very, very famous.
next to the Bible, it's like I think the most sold Christian piece of literature. But I bought one in
Yeah.
like modern English. Look at that guy; he's a stud. Uh, so, but it's like just blowing my mind, and just I don't know, just a really cool story. And like for myself, um, being in leadership, being around people, being around all these different areas, it's an area where I kind of like
Mm.
back out and like really kind of be a part of this story, as opposed to just always being turned on to how
Yeah.
does how's this decision affecting someone else right now? How's what I'm doing just stewarding people well? Am I caring for people well? Am I serving people in the right way? It allows me to like reset my mind a little bit and like
Hmm.
kind of come back to my own. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Um,
It's a great book too. It's very like the allegorical approach that it takes to just understanding like these very like innate human stories. Like these are like the archaic since the beginning of time type
mhm.
human stories of like fighting, slaying the dragon or whatever kind of idea.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's got like yeah, I mean, reading it in the modern English translation, good call. Is a little intense reading the 1600s version, but
yeah. I
sorry, you just cut out there for a second. Yeah, we're recording again. I just turned it off for a couple minutes because it's
yeah,
like might as well.
okay, I understand.
You were in the
Um,
middle of something really good. I can't remember exactly what you were saying, but it
I
was
think
something deep.
just about like one of the biggest things I've learned about leadership is just, um, I guess just seeking to learn what other people know. Like just honestly, just like trying to be a follower, but like still being a leader, but being someone who like, wants to learn other people's like experiences, like people's experiences, like so many things that I've learned about how to coach people, to just develop people in the restaurant business, to
Hmm.
uh, like have conflict resolution, to balance that line between like as a business owner, you've got to draw a hard line, and like you got to have hard conversations. But how do you have those conversations and lead those with grace and like love and care while still doing what the business needs to happen? like that's a hard line to do, but like the person I was with before this one, like he really challenged me on those areas, and it helped kind of push me to where I'm at now, like way more comfortable with that. But it just like took time, and then a leader kind of like helping me, and it's kind of refining that skill, I guess, within that process. But in terms of like the things that have been most challenging, and I've thought actually a lot about this one the last couple days, about like traveling is an amazing gift, and it really is an amazing gift, and I love what I'm doing. I think the biggest piece of it that is like a challenge for a lot of people in the program that I talk to is, um, being on the road, traveling as a single guy. You're by yourself. It's like a really challenging thing to do, especially when you're like a big family person. Like like I'm close to my family. Like we're really tight. Um, it really does come with its challenges. Like just speaking like rawly, like just honestly about it, is like there's moments where like it gets lonely, and it's like when you're on the road, when you're traveling, when you're working in a place, your mindset necessarily isn't always, hey, like community, I can go hang out with this person. It's like, where do you get that? So the biggest challenge for it, but also like the biggest gift at the same time, every city that I've went to, I've been able to plug into a local church, and like each church has just welcomed me in so much. It's like just been such just a home, like a home base, where like we're closed on Sundays, and like most Sundays I was in every city, someone would like invite me to come over for dinner, for lunch, for things like that, where like instantly there's this level of like true fellowship, like real fellowship. At the same time, like I do feel like the challenge of like being on the road, it's a reality of it, is you've got to really be disciplined, really be intentional, and really set up different systems around, whether it's accountability systems, whether it's communication with people on a regular basis back home, whether it's spending that time in the Word, spending that time in prayer, like really doing the things that like fill up a soul rather than just like fill up my day. And like that's a challenge when you're traveling alone as well, is that there's not a whole lot of people to kind of pull you back. It's I have the freedom to go and work. I can work all the time if I wanted to. However, the challenge with that is like I can't really give fully. I can't really care for people well if I also don't care for myself and fill myself up. It's like me trying to pour into a bunch of people without pouring back into my cup.
Then
Like
there's nothing to pour in.
exactly, exactly. And I think like that challenge is like it's a real thing, but like there's ways that you can move around that, and like it really is just intentionality with like seeking out fellowship, and intentionality with like seeking community of people that have, um, for myself, like a true like Christian community of like people who like love and care and serve one another, and like have a shared like desire to want to honor God, and do what's pleasing to Him. Um, so I think like the biggest challenge outside of like the business piece would be that, is like, how do you navigate traveling around America where there's no like home base? You're just kind of this floater. Um,
Yeah, you're
so that
almost a
kind of,
drifter.
yeah, I'm a drifter, man. But at the same time, like keeping that thought of like, I'm here for a reason right now. Like my role hasn't changed, my job hasn't changed. I'm in a different
Mhm.
environment, but I'm still like called to the same thing. Um,
Especially for someone who's temperamentally as community oriented as you are, right? Like some people might be a little bit more introverted and like to spend time by themselves, but like,
mhm,
if you're I guess everyone needs to have people too, like even the most introverted, but yeah, like especially for someone who
mhm,
has, you know, always liked to connect and always liked to be involved in as many things as possible. Like even when you were in school, earlier you were talking about how you were, involved in all this stuff, studying business, but also working on leadership type things. And so it fuels well into doing a leadership program, but it's also, you know, I guess those training programs can be challenging, and sometimes the health of the trainees is not as forefront, like you're working so much that you don't think about, getting enough sleep or having community or all the things that you need in order to be able to connect with people, you know?
Yeah, and I would say though at the same time it's cool that this is where I think Chick-fil-A differs, is that it's not only like me to my people, it's like the support center, so our headquarters to me even. Every time that I have like monthly calls with my like cohort consultant who he basically like is overseeing me throughout the program and like throughout running these restaurants right now. Um, but he always like starts with like how are you doing? Like he always asks like genuinely how are you doing? He's like he always follows up with like I hope that you're finding that time to just be alone, like take a couple days off, like just pour into yourself, like just really like just like self-care, like honestly
Mm,
self-care. And he just knows that if he doesn't care for us in the same way, um, then we won't be as productive as well. So it's like this aspect of really is like I do feel cared for in an extraordinary way, but I don't feel coddled. And like that balance is like a
mm.
really cool place to be in.
And then it fights against your own personality, like your own self-imposed overworking or your self-imposed whatever it is, and you just have to be careful not to burn yourself out either with that kind of thing,
Exactly.
which
Exactly.
I think everyone's probably done that at least. Well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have
Oh
probably
yeah. Oh yeah. We've
experienced that.
absolutely hit some walls in our life.
Yeah, of
um,
like, hey, yeah, let's maybe doing all of these things and trying to add a new thing wasn't a good call kind of idea.
exactly. Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. And like that's kind of I would say the biggest like challenge with that, but then with the biggest like I guess the best part so far of this program has um man, it really is an amazing company to work with and work for and serve with. Um, the people that I work alongside, the people that I get to invest in and pour into, every single assignment I go into. Um, so far, I've had 3 assignments, and I'm about to go to the grand opening side where I open new restaurants up. But
where will your first grand opening restaurant be?
it's gonna be in California.
California.
Yeah, so I'll
Sweet.
be going there, and then after that, like could be anywhere, but like it's exciting. It's gonna be some really cool openings, and I get to kind of lead a team of trainers and basically like help kind of be
Hmm.
basically the consultant for that operator to help them transition that restaurant like smoothly and well, and help them succeed. So like my goal is to set the operator for success. That's what I do.
So
Um,
exciting.
but just like honestly being able to like just pour into and care for young leaders and young team members and or old team members. Um, even right now, like I got 2 directors that I like we had 0 staff, so they're brand new to my team. Had some Chick-fil-A experience, and like just being able to like pour into these directors of this restaurant who are the ones when we step away and we leave, like they'll be the ones that operator like fully relies upon to run the business. And like literally what I get to do is just like walk alongside them, coach them, like teach them how to lead people, how to have hard conversations, how to like hold people accountable, like all these different things, how to implement systems, like but like ultimately it's like how do you care and lead and create a culture where people feel cared for in this way.
Mm.
To be able to facilitate that, Ben, is like such a joy. Like it is such a joy. um, so I would say that's like my favorite piece about it. When I think about being an operator one day, if the Lord like leads me there, then like amazing. And if not, like that's okay as well, like I said. But I would
Hmm.
like love to be able to impact a community and a culture where you bring that kind of radical hospitality and like bring that into a community that is just it's kind of missing. Like I really do believe that that's a huge opportunity to bring into the business world, to just a community, is like coming back to that aspect of like I want people to feel welcomed, to feel at home, and then to there go for back into the community, whether it's like my team members, whatever it might be, the leaders, like to go back into the community and like welcome people into that. So
Hmm.
uh, kind of my vision within it, but
Yeah, and it's always going to be a good experience or a good thing to have done, you know, to have learned how to teach and to be taught and in a leadership
mm-hmm,
perspective, because whatever you do in life, it's going to involve leadership, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You know,
exactly,
super
exactly.
cool. That's awesome. Um, all right, Link, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on. Before I ask my last question, is there anything else that you'd like to say, either about Chick-fil-A or about whatever other stuff that you're working on right now that you just think would be worth noting?
Um, and first off, like, thanks so much for like giving me the opportunity to share with you, catch up on life, hear how you've been doing a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh, I wish, like, I'll give you a call here soon, and we'll be able to dive in some more.
for
But
sure.
it's cool seeing like this podcast, for example, a chance for people to hear different thoughts, different perspectives, and I love that you're running it. So thank you again, man, for giving me the chance to just share and just catch up with you. And I love seeing what you're doing. It's really cool.
Appreciate it a lot. Appreciate it. All right. So the last question is, if you could share one message and have it get through all the noise and really connect with people, what would that be? I know you've talked a lot about some of the different messages that you would like to share, but just doesn't have to be the only one, because I know there's always many. But if you could just think of one kind of big thing that you think would be beneficial for everyone to hear, what would that message be?
Hmm. That's a great question. That's a great question. Um, hmm. I think like the big thing that I've just been remembering, and I just like really hope that people know and like start to see and recognize, is like that there's a reason things happen. But there's a creator who is in full control of everything going on right now, good, bad, pretty ugly, going well, not going well. Um, and there's reasons that things happen. There's a reason that like everything going on around us right now is happening the way it is. And I think within that, it gives us like a pretty good glimpse into this aspect of like there's clearly a good and a bad. There's clearly a right, not clearly like right and wrong necessarily, but there's like a good and an evil. From my view into things right now, there's clearly this aspect of um, something is not right. And like from I really do believe that um, that God is fully in control. That right now is like a cool opportunity for um, I think that like kind of that the unified body of Christ, like being under his rule and his reign, is what like I really believe like brings like eternal peace, like eternal joy, eternal like true joy, not just happiness, but like true joy. Um, and we look around, like a lot of people are like seeking joy, like they're seeking fulfillment, they're seeking to find more, to seeking happiness, like the pursuit of happiness, like not finding it, and like they're seeking to be like to come across a certain way and just not finding it. It's like, why not? Like I believe that, again, this is like my personal belief, but I really do believe that like there's a creator who cares and loves us a lot, and like wants to be in communion with us, and like send his son to like take that penalty of like what we are walking in, which is sin, um, and took it on our behalf so that we didn't have to feel that weight, feel that burden, um, and like it's it's freeing. Like it really is freeing to be able to like live life with complete freedom, knowing that like there's no shame, there's no guilt. Like it's as far as the east is from the west, that's as far as my transgressions are from me. Um, and like that's available. That's available for anyone. Um, and yeah, I think like through the noise, through everything going on right now, it's easy to be like seeking division. It's easy to be seeking um, hatred. That's what it is. It's hatred for another person, other people. Like that's evil. I really do believe that that's evil. Trying to seep in and just put a stamp on things. And like I think that God is a God of peace, but He's also a God of like justice. He's a God of truth. Um, and yeah, that's like just the big thing that I kind of have been feeling lately, and I feel that as a message that the world, um, I pray and I hope that the world would come to hear and know and like trust in that peace that comes with like a life submitting to the true Lord, and like the true King.
Hmm. Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you a lot, Ben. It's been a huge pleasure again.